Thank you, Rivo, and thank you, everyone. And first of all, apologies for this technical glitch and you having to wait. Now, yeah, okay. Okay. So coming to the idea of like certainty, we are passing through this time period of an incredible, disruptive, chaotic change. And in that context, our human minds is perplexed, confused, lost, and struggling with a cognitive system that is not able to handle the explosion of knowledge, explosion of change, new technologies, unable to figure things out. What is true, what is false? The mental reality in which we were living is falling apart. And there's a great deal of mental disorder spreading across the world. And in a way, the phase that brought us to this point, the age of reason, that began with Descartes' declaration, I think, therefore I am. That power of thought and rational intelligence that gave us immense power, immense creativity, and the whole civilization that grew out of it, led by the Western Enlightenment in Europe. That peak is crossing, and mind it has reached a point where it cannot go forward with its rational, linear mode of thinking. And in a way, we are handing over the power of thought to the machines who are able to think much better. And a whole new type of society, unimaginable future is emerging. And on one side, people are imagining terrible future, disastrous future. Some are imagining incredibly wonderful future of abundance. And the spectrum in between. That's the kind of context we are in. But when we are looking at this change from Sri Aurobindo's perspective, we see three fundamental shifts, which he had already foreseen more than 100 years ago and articulated, gave us the pathway of the transition. So the very first transition that he has given us with great clarity is shifting from the mind to a new consciousness, what he referred as the supermind. In a way, Earth consciousness is going through an upgradation. Earth mind is upgrading into a new level of consciousness. It is a global shift that is happening. That's the first one, mind to supermind. In that large shift that is happening, the old structures are collapsing. We can clearly see the cognitive structures of the mind is collapsing. It is not able to comprehend the rate of change, making sense out of it is becoming impossible. We need different faculty. That has become very, very clear. Our linear way of approaching will not work. Something else is required. Here is where the individual transition comes into. So first is the Earth's mind shifting into supermind, a large activity. In that context, is the individual, we, the individual mind, struggling in the space. with our limited physical, biological, and psychological system, unable to take the pressure of things and falling back into fear, falling back into anxiety, and a great deal of breakdown of the mind is happening. And this is where the yoga comes into picture, how to upgrade individual psychology, biology, physiology. Now, that is at the individual level, where Gnostic being is birthing itself. And place like Auroville is conceived for that birth. So we have the earth consciousness shifting from mind to light. In that context, there is an individual transformation that is required. A shift like larva to butterfly. Now, that's not enough. Third shift that is happening is these individuals historically have been self-organizing into clusters, into clans, into kingdoms, into empires. Now the latest, our most largest unit of organization is nation state. Now that nation state has become obsolete and something larger than nation state, a global civilization is emerging. A new organization is required beyond the nation state. This is where the Gnostic communities are expected to emerge, and this is where Auroville is expected to play its role. And it is set in motion in that direction, a vessel for the manifestation. Here we also see already the smaller units are far more powerful than nation states. But it is happening in the corporate world. There, people have come together, harness the power of collective creativity, collective intelligence, collective willpower, harness the money, harness the power. Now they are setting the agenda for the course of development through a sheer technological development and pioneering work. It's like building the future, and this is being done by smaller units, much smaller than the nation states in terms of numbers, but far more powerful than the nation states. And these are transnational collective beings, but predominantly driven by power. We conquered money power, conquered the power of materializing, managing collectivity, collective intelligence, collective creativity, but also with that intense creativity also coming intense disruptive tendencies of the economic system of which we are a part. And that economic system is on the edge of collapse. And this is where a new economic system, new collective being, a collective being that is transnational. Auroville is a transnational collective being, which is a civilizational project, a new civilizational unit. A global civilization is emerging, which is composed of smaller, powerful entities organized differently. Now, in that context, this is a small fractal. Now, how this is going to play out in the future, that we can understand by seeing the past. In the past 50 years of Auroville, we can see when Auroville was launched, open source movement was not there. But very first line of Auroville belongs to nobody in particular. A collective life based on non-ownership, collective ownership. The very principle was launched in 1968 with Auroville Chapter. And soon we saw down the line across the world open source movement happening. This is non-linear causation unfolding. And this is unfolding because even when a small group of people do a transformative work in a small area, there is a ripple effect happening across the planet. It is not linear causation, but it is non-linear because it's a shift happening in consciousness. When a group of people come together and give their life, sacrifice their life to manifest it, it has a ripple effect and there's a transition happening in the world. That is the first open source movement emerged spontaneously across the world. Now it's a living new way of self-organizing collective life and collective creativity. Second, lifelong education. Auroville declared at the very beginning, Auroville is a place of unending education. Now it is a practical necessity across the planet. Everyone must get into the boat of unending education. Similarly, when Auroville was generally regenerating the land, this movement happened way before the green movement emerged across the planet. And here was a group of people who were regenerating the land, afforestation, water conservation, all that movements. By 90s, suddenly we see spontaneously across the planet green movement picking up. There is nothing that Orwell directly did. It is purely non-linear causation happening from an inside out way. Again, we take renewable energy. Orwell had been making windmills, 80s, 90s. Now across the planet, we see windmills spinning everywhere. So there are so many examples of new way of scaling of a transformation, which is non-linear. It emerges like dots across the planet. But somewhere, some group of people need to start prototyping new change. It's a shift in consciousness. Outer tools kits that we develop are secondary. Now, Auroville is currently also in a big crisis from what it used to be in the last 50 years, where we have emerged into a collection of small or extreme diversity. That is the field of tremendous creativity. But that phase is coming to an end, where there is a force that is forging all the small things and fit them into a larger collective being, which can unleash a greater power of creative possibility. That's the pressure right now on Auroville. Now, in this context, what Auroville will do in this space, where how do we learn to collaborate with even people with extremely different viewpoints, extremely different cultures. This is where the human unity dimension comes in. This is where the psychological transformation, psychological upgrade of the individual and collective life systems, all that will be required. This pressure is currently extensively pressing upon Orwell. And at the same time, we see across the world intentional communities emerging. And many things that Auroville tested and found did not work, many are already taking up. For example, many things like sitting in circles, participatory process, all that, it works at a certain scale. Beyond certain scale, we need a different way of thinking, organizing, self-governing ourselves to become far more creative together. While it is possible to stay in small isolated pockets, one can have diversity, but we cannot have unity and the creative power of the unity without destroying the diversity. So that challenge is what currently we are into. And here again, it will not come from outside. We have to build it inside out because this requires the inner transformation. That inner transformation is really the work of yoga, where how we transcend the mind, the thinking mind, the rational mind, ending of it, arriving or entering into a deep inner silence. In that space, where do we get certainty? How do we know what is true? If the thinking ends, if thought is brought to silence, how do we know what is true, what is the right course of action? Here comes the deeper layers beyond the mind, into our energy field, into our very physical substance. And body has a bundle of vibration that is can be in harmony or in coherence or in out of coherence, disharmony. So working within that little space by establishing peace, silence, harmony, and becoming the agents of reception and transmission of a new force that is already set in motion on Earth in 1956. There is a force at work that is disrupting the planet across. And that force requires instruments through which it can work. And that is the highest potential that is available in our body. And when the mind becomes silent, when the thinking becomes silent, we enter into a space of certainty and knowing that is coming from a deep silence, from the very substance of your being, from the very vibrational quality of your being, very dynamic force that is moving through you. And it is something that you can see that it is not moving just you, it is moving across the world. And there is a force that moves in stillness. There is a dynamism and stillness that is together. A dynamic peace. like resting in action, where certainty is moment to moment, like music moving from its ascension and descending movements and orchestra and harmony. It is felt in the body. So the movement of harmony and the body as the heart that can tune into that. And within that, the emergence of the soul and the light and harmony and joy of it that is flowing through us. And from there, this individual is able to network and connect. Clustering of resonance. People coming together because they are resonating with each other. So clusters of resonance and sub-clusters networking with other clusters of resonance and network of clusters. That's the new form of self-organizing force field and clustering of people that is emerging. Yes, and the current pressure is also bringing in many of the old systems that belong to the past century through the kind of intervention that we are experiencing. But that I believe is a temporary part of the collateral damage that we have to go through. The real work is inner and individuals coming together into clusters of resonance and clusters coming together into network of clusters. That's the future we are into. And here we are tuning into the global shift that is happening, as well as individual shift that is happening, as well as a collective being that is emerging. With we can say collective yoga, where people unite at a deep level. It is not association at the level of emotion. It is not association because of our old tradition, or tribal affinity. It is something much deeper than that. There is a unity at a very deep level where you know that the people out there with whom you are engaging with, it is part of one large body that is acting. And there's a collective creativity, collective force, and collective joy, something that transcends the individual. What an individual can do is nothing compared to what a group can do. A group in resonance. That's the challenge we are in, and that we can enter only when this machine is switched off. Because this machine is living in uncertainty, in anxiety, and it has to be switched off. And then the adventure starts from there. The discernment starts from there. So that's what I would present as my observations and experiments and the journey in our work. I don't think we have to fight with old systems. There are many of the old formations coming and trying to establish itself. These are obsolete formations from the past. It has no future and it has no resonance with Auroville and the soul of Auroville and the future of Auroville. It is a temporary deformation, we may say. It will not last because it has nothing to do with the soul of Auroville. The future, the rapid change that is happening in the world, which we need to tune into, because within coming 5 years, the kind of shift that world is undergoing and our ability to adapt to those changes, possibilities, new systems, technologies, schemes that are arising, and it will be in our disposal. That is birthing a completely different way of self-organizing, which is yet to fully reveal itself. But we are on the edge of it already with all the AI and self-regulatory possibilities, all that are emerging. So meanwhile, there are these old 20th century systems trying to establish and trying to create some order out of this chaos. It won't work. in such a scenario, how saying that we are in the cradle of the divine taken care of, or what kind of responsibility do you envisage that we who are in the cradle of so it is not our this is this is not our capacity. It Auroville is special because the founder of Auroville, she has created a spiritual formation. It is that as a magnet represented by Atmandev, the four powers, the 12 qualities, and the radiant force that is coming out of it. That is the DNA of the new words. And that is what makes the place special. Not us. We are generations of people who are drawn by the magnet. Many generations will come and go within the process. But that force is what makes our special. And this particular spot on earth, this little soil, red soil, is special because of that. Not because we figured out how to plant trees or how to use renewable energy or cycles of this. Has nothing to do with that. These are all most outer superficial technical layers. The real movement is coming from the spiritual force that is already established. The vortex is already spinning, and the ripples are across the planet. In the eye of the whirlwind, the light will change and the new blossom will come in. Again, we will feel the eye of the whirlwind. We keep hoping that whirlwind keeps guiding us again so that we don't fall back into slumber. Thank you so much, Manoj, for this presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
No, no, why we kept this? We couldn't hear your voice.
Huh?
We couldn't hear your voice. Yeah, yeah, we could hear, but people. For the next one. Don't stop smoking, brother. Brother, nothing. Stop smoking. पानी पियो, कुछ और करो. एक के बाद अगर पीते रहोगे तो फिर मतलब क्या ही होगा. सत्प्रेम सत्प्रेम हाँ is an answer. Yep.